The moors are not empty. They appear so from a distance, wide, open, exposed, a stretch of land where nothing stands tall enough to claim attention. But once entered, once walked, the moors reveal a different truth. They are full of quiet, wind moving low across grass, mist rising without urgency, stone half buried, watching. This is where the brown man belongs. Tonight, as sleep begins to take hold, we journey into the foggy space between folklore and fear. If you're listening from a quiet place, a late hour, or the slow edge of sleep, you're invited to share where you're listening from in the comments. And if these calm stories of old landscapes and older presences are something you return to, you're welcome to subscribe and join us again. Fairy Tales After Dark is made for nights like this. This is the legend of the brown man of the moors, an ancient figure spoken of in the highlands and open uplands. Not as a monster, not as a god, but as something older than either. A solitary guardian bound to land that does not welcome ownership. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. Welcome to Fairy Tales After Dark. Long before the moors were crossed by mapped paths, before fences carved the land into claims, people understood these places as belonging to themselves alone. The moors were not hostile, but they were indifferent. They did not bend to travelers. They did not guide them kindly, and they did not forgive carelessness. It was said that something lived there, not dwelling in a single hill or hollow, but moving with the land itself. The brown man was not tall, not imposing. Those who claimed to see him described a figure easily mistaken for stone or soil, earth-toned, weathered, his skin the color of peat and bark, his clothing indistinguishable from moss and lichen, a shape that did not interrupt the landscape, only completed it. He did not announce himself. A traveler might walk for hours without realizing they were being observed. The sense came first, a feeling of being measured, not judged, not threatened, simply noticed, as though the land itself had turned its attention briefly in one's direction. Then, sometimes, the figure appeared, standing still, half-formed from mist and shadow, a man-shaped presence that did not step forward, did not raise a hand, did not speak unless spoken to, and even then, words were rare. In the oldest tellings, the brown man was a guardian, but not in the way humans imagine guardianship. He did not protect travelers from harm. He protected the moor from misuse, those who crossed respectfully, who took nothing they could not justify, who moved with patience and awareness, often passed without incident. Some reported a feeling of being guided, paths seeming clearer, fog thinning just enough to allow direction, wind shifting at the right moment. Others were not so fortunate. Those who rushed, who hunted greedily, who treated the moor as empty ground rather than living space, found themselves turned around. Paths vanished, landmarks failed to repeat. The ground itself seemed to rearrange. The brown man did not attack, he misled. This distinction matters. He did not strike with violence, he tested, he warned. He allowed people to lose themselves just long enough to understand where they were, and what they were not meant to dominate. In some stories, travelers realized only later that they had spoken to him at all. A brief exchange, a question answered obliquely, directions given that felt correct but carried an edge of ambiguity. It was only upon leaving the moor, upon reaching safety, that the realization settled. They had not been helped, they had been evaluated. The brown man is not said to roam beyond the moors. He does not follow people home. He does not linger in villages or fields. His presence fades where the land softens, where trees grow thick, where stone yields to shelter. The moors are his boundary, wide, exposed, honest. Here, nothing hides for long, and nothing belongs that does not earn its place. Now, as the wind of the story settles, imagine standing on such land, the horizon low, the sky heavy, the ground beneath firm but unforgiving, and somewhere nearby, not approaching, not retreating, a presence as old as the stone beneath your feet, not watching you, watching how you move. The moors do not offer shelter easily. This is their first lesson. There are few places to hide, few landmarks that promise return. Distance behaves strangely here. A hill that looks near may take hours to reach. A stone seen once may not appear again. The land does not deceive. It simply refuses to accommodate haste. The brown man belongs to this refusal. In the oldest folklore, he is not described as hostile. He does not bar passage. He does not demand tribute. He allows people to move freely, and in doing so, he reveals how they move. This is the nature of the test. Those who cross the moor slowly, who pause to read the wind, who notice the way mist settles and lifts, often find the land more forgiving. Paths become legible. Direction holds. The silence feels spacious rather than threatening. Others fare differently. A traveler who pushes forward without listening, who treats the land as something to be crossed rather than entered, finds the ground answering in kind. Wind rises without warning. Fog closes suddenly. Familiar features fail to align. Nothing dramatic occurs. No force intervenes. The land simply stops assisting. This is where the brown man's role becomes clear. He does not create the danger. He allows it. Stories tell of travelers who believed they were being guided. A figure seen ahead, briefly, always at a distance, standing where the ground seemed passable. Each time the traveler moved closer, the figure shifted slightly, leading without leading, indicating without confirming. The brown man never beckons. He waits to see whether someone will follow without question. If they do, the moor responds. Direction loosens. Time stretches. Fatigue settles in. The land grows larger while the traveler grows smaller. Eventually, some realize the pattern. They stop. They turn away from the figure. They choose to orient themselves by stone, by wind, by memory. Only then does the presence recede. Others persist, trusting the figure more than their own senses. These are the ones who wander longest, not forever, but long enough to learn restraint. Long enough to understand that the moor does not reward certainty. It rewards awareness. The brown man is said to speak rarely. When he does, his words are simple, sometimes misleading, sometimes precise, always incomplete. He answers questions with answers that require thought rather than obedience. Where is the path? It is where the ground holds. How far to shelter? Farther than you think. Such answers do not help the impatient. They frustrate those who want assurance, but they reveal much to those willing to listen beyond the surface. In this way, the brown man is not a guide, he is a measure. He reveals how a person moves through uncertainty, whether they demand control or accept limitation, whether they treat the land as backdrop or as presence. This is why he remains solitary. Guardians of open land cannot belong to communities. They cannot explain themselves repeatedly. Their work depends on being encountered rarely, unexpectedly, without preparation. The moors themselves enforce this solitude. There are no crowds here, no shared certainty, no place to gather safely for long. Anyone who enters must do so alone, even in company. Each person experiences the land privately. The brown man stands within this truth. He does not intervene to save. He does not intervene to punish. He allows the encounter to unfold. And then, once the lesson has been learned or ignored, he withdraws. The moor closes around the moment. Paths return or remain lost. Weather shifts. Silence resumes. The presence is gone. Only the memory remains. And the knowledge that the land did not change. The traveler did. Not every encounter with the brown man was recognized in the moment. Many stories speak of travelers who crossed the moor without incident. No figure seen, no voice heard, nothing that could be named as unusual. Only later, when the land softened and shelter was found, did the unease settle in. They realized how close they had come to losing direction, in villages bordering the moors. These realizations were shared quietly, not as warnings shouted, but as stories spoken low, often after the journey was already complete. A man might mention how the fog lifted just as he chose to stop walking. A shepherd might recall a path that curved when it should not have. A hunter might admit he felt watched without ever seeing why. No one insisted the brown man had appeared. They did not need to. The presence was understood through pattern rather than proof. These stories were not meant to frighten listeners. They were meant to adjust behavior, to remind those who would cross the moor again that movement alone was not enough. That direction had to be earned. Some spoke of hearing footsteps where no one walked. Slow, measured, never closing distance. Others described a figure glimpsed only from the corner of the eye, standing where stone met grass. Gone when looked at directly. Not retreating, simply absent. The brown man did not pursue recognition. He allowed misunderstanding. This was part of the test. A traveler who assumed the more harmless often moved carelessly. A traveler who assumed it hostile often rushed. Both were mistakes. The stories taught a third posture: respect without fear, attention without expectation. Children learned these stories early, not as fairy tales, but as local knowledge, as instruction wrapped in memory. The brown man became a way to explain why adults moved slowly on open land, why they stopped without reason, why they listened before choosing a direction. Do not walk straight across the moor. Do not trust the shortest path. Do not ignore the wind. The brown man did not need to be believed to be effective. Even those who dismissed him as superstition followed the same habits. They slowed. They paused. They checked their footing. The legend shaped behavior whether acknowledged or not. This is how guardians endure, not by appearing often, but by being remembered. The moor itself reinforced the lesson. Each time someone wandered too far, each time fog closed suddenly, each time a path failed to return where expected, the story gained weight. The brown man did not need to act. The land acted for him. And in this way, the stories carried forward, passed not as myth alone, but as accumulated understanding. The knowledge that open places require humility, and that not everything encountered is meant to guide. The brown man remains in stories because the moors remain in the world, even as paths are mapped, even as borders are drawn. There are still places that resist certainty, land that cannot be fully known from a distance, terrain that demands presence rather than planning. The moors have always been such places. They appear simple, but they are not. This is why figures like the brown man do not fade easily. They belong to landscapes that continue to test those who enter them. Long after belief softens, long after names are forgotten, the experience remains. A person steps onto open ground, the sky wide, the wind unbroken, the land offering no instruction, and something ancient in the mind responds. Attention sharpens, pace slows, confidence loosens. The brown man is the shape this feeling takes. In later tellings, his role becomes quieter, less dramatic. He is no longer seen clearly, more often felt. A sense of being out of step, a moment of hesitation where none existed before. A sudden awareness that the land does not answer to intention alone. Some describe him as a presence that corrects excess, not by force, but by removal. Removing direction, removing familiarity, removing the illusion that the land must cooperate. This is how guardians of open places operate. They do not protect people from danger, they protect the land from carelessness. In the moors, this distinction matters. There is no malice in the brown man's actions. He does not seek to harm. He does not seek obedience. He seeks balance. And balance in such places is achieved by humility. Those who learn this carry it with them long after leaving. They walk differently. They plan with more patience. They listen before deciding. The land teaches through exposure. The brown man gives that lesson a face, a form, a presence that can be remembered when the wind rises and the path begins to blur. As the world changed and fewer people crossed the moors on foot, the stories changed as well. The brown man became less a figure seen and more a rule understood. A reminder passed quietly. A warning without threat. Do not rush open land. Do not assume guidance. Do not expect shelter where none is promised. These lessons did not require belief in spirits. They required memory. The brown man persisted because he explained something people already knew. That isolation reveals character. That open ground magnifies intention. That the land does not bend to confidence. Now, as the story slows toward rest, imagine the moor at dusk. The light thinning, the wind settling into a steady presence. The land unchanged. Whether anyone walks it or not, The brown man does not need to appear. His work is done whenever someone pauses, whenever a step is reconsidered, whenever the land is treated as something that exists on its own terms. He remains where he has always been, not watching, not waiting, simply present, as long as the moors endure. There are times when no one crosses the moor at all. Days pass without footfall. Nights stretch without voices. The wind moves unchallenged across grass and stone. Mist settles where it chooses. And the land exists entirely on its own terms. In these hours, the brown man is not absent. He is indistinguishable. This is how he has always preferred it. Stories often focus on encounters, on moments when someone notices the presence. But the deeper truth of the legend lives in the long stretches where nothing happens, where no test is needed because no one has arrived to be tested. The moor does not require guardianship when it is left alone. It requires memory. Older folk believe that the brown man walked these open places even when unseen, not patrolling, not searching, simply moving with the land as it shifted, his shape changing with light, with weather, with distance, at times more stone than man, at times more shadow than form. This was not meant to suggest constant watchfulness, it suggested continuity. The land did not reset itself when people left. It continued, weathered, adjusted, endured. And when travelers returned after long absence, the moor responded as it always had, without recognition, without welcome, without hostility, offering only what it had always offered: space, exposure, and silence. Those who expected the land to remember them were disappointed. Those who expected nothing were rarely surprised. The brown man exists within this logic. He does not hold grudges. He does not keep count. He does not mark time by human measure. His presence is tied to rhythm rather than event, to seasons passing, to erosion, to the slow wearing of stone beneath wind and rain. This is why the legend does not fade with disuse. It does not depend on retelling. It depends on terrain. As long as there are open places that resist certainty, as long as there are landscapes that offer no clear instruction, figures like the brown man will remain possible, not as sightings, but as understanding. The moor does not explain itself. It allows itself to be entered or avoided, and in that allowance, the brown man's work continues, quietly, without witness, without conclusion. The moor does not close itself at night. It opens. As light thins, details loosen. The land stops offering clarity and begins offering presence. Stone softens into shape. Grass becomes movement. Distance loses its measure. The wind no longer announces direction. It simply moves. This is the hour the brown man belongs to most fully. Not because he becomes more active, but because the land itself grows closer to what it has always been. A place without instruction, without reassurance, without need for witnesses. In these hours, a traveler learns quickly whether they are listening. The body senses slope before the eye confirms it. The feet test ground before committing weight. Movement becomes deliberate, careful, responsive. This is the behavior the brown man is said to favor. He does not appear to those who move this way. He has no reason to. His presence is felt most clearly by those who resist the land's rhythm, those who hurry against the wind, those who insist on straight lines where none exist, those who trust distance over texture. For them, the moor grows wider, time stretches, orientation loosens, familiar markers fail to return, nothing threatens, nothing chases. The land simply stops assisting. In this quiet withdrawal, the brown man's work is complete. He does not need to stand in view. He does not need to be seen at all. The test has already occurred. The lesson is unfolding. Those who slow, who pause, who allow the land to lead rather than demand it, find their way again. Not easily, not quickly, but honestly. Those who do not, wander longer. This is not punishment. It is alignment. The moor responds only to what meets it on its own terms. As night deepens, the presence of the brown man fades back into the land, not leaving, not departing, simply becoming indistinguishable from stone and wind and earth. As he always has been, there is no ending here, no resolution, only continuation. The moor remains, the land breathes, the wind moves on, Whatever walked here before leaves no lasting mark, and whatever walks here next will be tested in the same quiet way. Now, as your thoughts slow and the story settles, imagine the moor resting beneath a wide sky, mist lying low, the ground firm where it needs to be, soft where it must be. Nothing approaches, nothing calls. The land holds itself, and somewhere within it, a presence older than names remains. Not watching, not waiting, simply part of the quiet that has always been here. Settle in, breathe deep, and let the night carry you onward. This has been Fairy Tales After Dark.